you enjoyed that. So
you just got into political intrigue there.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So basically, next 10 minutes, you can see the full agenda there. Basically, the next 10 minutes, it's an opportunity for anyone that wants to just to speak for about a minute about who they are, if they want to say how they are, why they're here, and absolutely to share a link to a website or anything else. If you don't want to speak, you can just share something. If you could do all of that in the next 10 minutes, though, so it doesn't disturb the actual talk, that would be great. The only thing I'll say in general is just obviously be nice and keep it fairly succinct. I'll just say that for the whole session because everyone wants to do these sort of events in sort of relatively short time. So, and try and give everyone a chance to speak. There's also links there about where you can follow the peer space. We're actually we're three now, the peer space. And by that, I mean, there's 3 of us involved in it and we're 3 years old. We've been doing these events for about 3 years, starting with a dinner group. And now it's been virtual for over a year. And we do a 60-minute session every Wednesday at 6 o'clock, alternating between speaker nights and kind of speed connecting nights. I'll say a bit more about how you might be able to support us or get more involved at the end. Who would like to introduce themselves? Any volunteers? Yeah, go, Esme.
Hey, Niall. I thought I'd start because you kindly invited me. Well, Jane actually invited me, who's a friend of both of ours. Hello, I'm Esme. I also just was in a breakout room with Georgie as well, so I got to know him. And hello from Bulgaria. And I am currently in Manchester. I'm working in the TV industry on the environmental team, and it's like a little bit hectic sometimes because it's the environment and the world that we're living in. But I'm glad to be doing spaces like this to talk about other things. So Niall actually asked me if I could talk in 2 weeks' time on my book that I've been writing. But within that, there's also stories that you create in your head, and sometimes they can be negative. So I've almost gone down to a story within a story and trying to uncover what's been going on with mental blockages within to try and promote my book as best as I can. So yes.
Brilliant. Thanks. Huck, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. My name is Håkon. Nobody can pronounce my name, so I'm often called Hawk or Hawk. I'm a monk, and I recently started an NGO, a humanitarian organization, which is called Earth House. And Earth House is also the name of my music genre. I do a little bit of, I got some songs up on Spotify and around. Earth House is dedicated to giving the voiceless a voice. Something I think is very, very necessary these days to fight against abuse, which often comes in the form of abuse from the systems that's meant to help us. So, and I also provide some services for other organizations because I've been in different organizations for a couple of decades or something like that. So, yeah, that's me, and I'm also a healer at times, and I love being here because it is like my happy space. It's great. So, thank you.
Thanks, Huck. He's quite a regular. Great to see you. Who else would like to take a minute to say a bit about who they are, where they are, how they are? Go, Phil.
Hi, I'm Phil. I'm in Surrey in England, and I have a company called Thought Space, which is for brainstorming, online brainstorming and collaborative thinking. And we've seemed to have had a bit of a breakthrough with Thought Space because we were struggling with getting subscribers, and we changed our business model, and suddenly we started getting subscribers, which is great news. So I'm very happy. That's me.
Congratulations. Great to hear. Thanks, Phil. Someone else like to take a minute? Apart from, yeah, go, John. John Gale. Oh, you're muted, John.
Thanks, Steve. So hi, I'm John Gale. I'm a consultant to high-tech startups. I've been doing that for about 20 years, 12 of those in Silicon Valley. Then I moved to Europe. So now my consulting business is based in London. Thanks.
Thanks, John. That's great. Who else would like to speak for a minute? Go, Louise.
I'm very aware Mandy's got her hand up for ages, Niall.
Oh, really? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't see
That's all
that.
right. I'm very
It's a
chill.
digital hand. Digital hand. Sorry, yeah.
That's all right. I don't mind. So I'm Mandy, and I was in a chat room just now with Tom, which was great because we discovered we have a mutual acquaintance. I work principally in cybersecurity. I'm currently delivering 9 police cyber centres across the UK. And I am really interested in what makes people happy. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, we've seen malicious cyber criminals really attack individuals, and often very vulnerable individuals in a really merciless way. And despite all of the work that we're doing to prevent that, it can, I think, particularly the pandemic has left people very isolated and very exposed and feeling very vulnerable. So I'm just interested to take part this evening to hear other people's views.
Great. Thanks very much, Mandy. Sorry about the not seeing your digital hand. Louise, do you want to go?
Thank you. So this is my first time joining tonight, so looking forward to it. I run a business, have been for Commit for 8 years. It's my name is my business because I am my business, and I support organisations going through large change, whether it's acquisition, integration, merger. So basically, I help navigate the complex and make it simple. But obviously, with all of that, there is a huge amount of impact on individuals as well as organisationally. So I'm really interested to hear Rob. And actually, I was fortunate to have Rob in the breakout rooms. So, but I'm interested to hear how some of that sport translates into business, all around performance, and just fascinated with the topic of happiness and people's propensity to it or not. And how that manifests. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this evening. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Louise. That's great. There's a few other people that haven't introduced themselves. Anyone else like to say something for a minute? We've got a couple more minutes. If not, Ellie. Hi.
Hi.
Would you like to introduce yourself for 1 minute? You're just taking the last slot.
Oh, okay. Let me turn on the video. So, hi everyone, my name is Ellie and I am CEO of Omni.bg. Our company is focusing on turning customer questions into conversational AI, in this business-focused conversational AI for various businesses. Brilliant.
That's great. Okay, I don't think anyone else has offered to introduce themselves. We're coming up to 20 past the hour anyway, so I am gonna. Rob and I have known each other over the last weeks, connected through one of the other speakers, and I'm fascinated by the general connection between sort of professional sports and form and all these kind of things. We've had a little bit of a chat about what he's going to cover. The format is really the floor's Rob's pretty much now almost to the end of the hour. Going to be a talk and then it opens up to a sort of Q&A discussion, but pretty much the floor is now Rob's.
Just unmute myself. Hi guys, it's a pleasure to be here. It's really nice to have you all here in the room. I also love the way of interacting like this because there are people that I'd never get to be in a room with, either overseas or in different parts of the country. So it's great to be here in your living rooms, in my living room, being able to talk to you. And the subject of happiness is one that I spend a lot of time working on. So I've gone to networking events before and people said, what do you do? And if I say things like I help people be happy, it sounds a bit woolly, it sounds a bit vague, but it's understanding that there is a link in terms of what will work for one person won't work for the next person. So happiness is subjective anyway. My background was sport. So I was a rugby player for my first job, if you can call it a job. My dad certainly didn't. But I spent a lot of time playing rugby, then moved into the world of business, from banking, then into insurance. I am now currently the talent and coaching manager for a company called Claims Consulting Group. So we deal in the insurance industry. I spent a lot of time coaching in our business, in other businesses, and with sports teams and clubs in the past. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is a couple of the principles that we have picked up over the years, and I coach. Some of the stuff I'll talk to you about today comes from a coaching system, something called Live Big, which I'll share with you at the end. And I'm very keen to give you some tools to take away. So when I give a talk like this will be a very high level because obviously the time frame we've got, but I'm very keen to make it as interactive as possible and to help maybe solve something for you and give you something you can take away and think about at the end of this. So if you just bear with me as we go through. To start off, what I'd like to do is give me a thumbs up to the camera if you like problems. Give me a thumbs up if you like surprises. More thumbs tend to go up for surprises than they do for problems. When I ask that session to the open floor, everyone says, "Oh, I love surprises, but I'm not too sure about problems." And the only difference between a surprise and a problem is what? It's whether we want it or not. So the event that happens around us is just an event. The story we tell ourselves dictates how we feel about it. And what we know from when we have these events that happen to us around, the story we tell ourselves dictates how we view it. It's true for a lot of our experience of life. Events are happening to us all the time around us. Lockdown is it's the hottest topic we can talk about at the moment. It's an event that's happening to us and around the world. And how we interpret it will tell us how we feel about it. In the way they're looking at it, we can view ourselves as being the editors of our own lives, and we can put an editorial slant on whichever story we want to see, and it will tell us something different. So the example I often use is if you were to drop your phone on the floor and smash it. You could say to yourself, "Oh my goodness, my arm's been cut off. I can't call my friends. I can't organize my life. I can't go online and browse or shop, whatever I want to do." Or you could say to yourself, "That's weird. I've never dropped a phone before, but at least now I might be able to get a newer model that I quite like." The dropping of the phone was neither good nor bad. It's a story I've told myself that dictates how I feel about it. And often the stories in our heads are often not true, and nor are they helpful. And that's a word I've used more in the last 12 or 14 months as a coach since lockdown 1 started for us back in March 2020 is the word helpful. It's hard to be positive all the time. People talk about positivity and the energy side of it. That's very difficult to do sometimes. And right now in the last 12 months, we've seen that especially. But the word I've replaced it a lot more is helpful. However you're feeling is absolutely fine. And if it's more helpful for you to feel down or you want to have a bit of time to yourself, absolutely fine. But often what I find when I talk to people in the world of sport and the world of business, some of the stories in our heads, not only are they not true, sometimes they're not helpful. But these thoughts are fundamental to our perceived level of happiness. For the majority of us, for the majority of the time, we have a choice about what we think and in turn, how we feel. Sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice. In the last year or so, it definitely hasn't felt like a choice, but we're making choices every day. I say the majority of us. I do a lot of work around the world of mental health as well. And there are times when that choice isn't ours, it's taken out of our hands. I fully get that. And I'm not saying to you that this solves those kind of issues and problems because they are very real and they do exist. But for the majority of us, we have this ability to make choices. Psychologists will estimate we have about 50,000 thoughts a day. And around about just over 70% of these thoughts are either unhelpful or negative thoughts based on our hardwiring. And what I mean by hardwiring is, if we go all the way back to our cave person past, we're hardwired from what happened to us then. So human beings tend to do two things on this planet. One is to avoid pain, one is to seek pleasure. Now, if we were to go back to our cave person past, avoid pain would have been things like attacked by a wild animal, a warring tribe, or a fire. Seeking pleasure would have been somewhere to live, something to eat, or a mate. Because this stuff would have killed us, it was game over stuff, we've become more hardwired to look for this than we are to look for this. It's why these days you might have conversations at home such as, "Where's the remote control? I haven't got it." It wasn't really what my question was. I was designed to say, "Can I have remote control?" But person B senses danger. You might think I've got it. So you might blame me for not having remote control. So once I can clear up the fact that I haven't got the remote control, we can then seek the pleasure of finding it together. Often these choices we're making are subconscious, and it's what we call a neural pathway. What I mean by a neural pathway is we've done a lot more walking as a species in the last 12 months. We had a lot of time and a lot of space to do it. So imagine a field, and you're going to walk through a field. Most fields that we're walking through will have a pathway somewhere through it, either through the middle or around the edge. It's a trodden area of that pathway we can walk through to get to the other side. If we're going to cross that field, we're more likely to walk through the pathway. Why? Because it's quicker, it might be easier, it might guarantee us that we know we're going to get to the other side. And our minds are very similar. So as we were growing up and developing as children, as young adults, Our mind was like that field. And when we're faced with a problem, we stand on one side of the field, we plot a way through the problem the first time we see it, and we start treading a path through that field. When we get to the other side, we realize we solved the problem.
Oh, that's bad. Are you okay, Rob?
That's fascinating. Okay, are we back? Now,
Yeah,
give me a thumbs up, we're back?
Yeah, thumbs up, yeah. All good.
Okay, we're back, okay.
Yeah,
I think everyone's phone's on my screen, but I have no idea what happened there. Fascinating. But our brains are like this pathway through a field. So as we plotted the way through the field for the first time, we've created the pathway and we've solved the problem. So the second time we're faced with that problem, we're more likely to walk the same pathway in our minds because we know it solves the problem. And as we do that over and over again, we create what we then know as a neural pathway. And that helps us in some ways that we don't have to relearn how to put our socks on every day. But there are some times when, or relearn how to ride a bike, but there are some times when this neural pathway starts to get in our way. And I'm going to give you an idea of a neural pathway now. So if you're all sitting down, I think everyone's sitting down. If you're not, if you can sit down for me, what I'd like you to do, and don't go nuts for this, we haven't warmed up. I'd like you to lift your right foot slightly off the floor for me. And I'd like you to very slowly start to rotate your foot in a clockwise direction, which means your toes go to the right. I had to explain that to a group once before, you didn't know what clockwise was, but yeah, your toes go to the right. And keep
Oh no, he's gone again.
Is this where he keeps
back?
Do you want to kill your camera, Rob?
Do I want to what, sorry?
Do you want to kill your camera, maybe? Will that help?
Clear my camera?
To stop your camera.
I don't know what it is causing it, because I literally keep dropping out.
Have you closed all the tabs if you have a browser open? That tends to take a lot of bandwidth.
I think this is a Zoom thing rather than a tech thing at anyone's end. I think this is a problem with Zoom.
Do you want to try just stopping your camera anyway? Or...
I can do. There's somebody's going to show you in a minute. Could everybody else go off camera? Would that work? And see if it will cause some of the bandwidth?
Let's try it.
Technology is amazing when it works.
Yeah.
No, give me the go ahead when you're happy for me to go again. Because I'm not sure. Everyone's sort of frozen at my end, so I'm not sure.
You seem okay now.
Happy with that?
Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Let's try.
Perfect. So if you can lift your right foot off the floor for me and slowly start to rotate your foot in a clockwise direction, so your toes go into the right, and keep your foot going round and round. This is a good example of a neural pathway coming up. Now what I'd like you to do is point your right index finger towards the screen, and starting at the top, I'd like you to draw the number 6 very slowly in the air over and over again. And at some point, you'll realize that your foot is now going the other way. This idea of a neural pathway was that the last conscious message you sent to your right foot was to go in a clockwise direction. And as you rotate it clockwise and then draw the number 6, your foot starts going the other way because your subconscious overrides it. You have a motor-based neural pathway that says your limbs must work in conjunction with each other. So your subconscious will override it. Next time you're going for a walk, try and keep your arms down by your side. It's exactly the same thing. You struggle to do that because it's not a normal thing for you to do. And so what I'm going to share with you today is this idea based on these neural pathways from this system called Live Big. Live Big started life as a product called the Powers of Engagement, designed for companies seeking to engage their staff. Over the years, it's become more apparent that some of these tools and ideas help us just live fuller, richer, more relaxed, and therefore sometimes happier lives. But happiness, again, is very subjective. And the model I'm going to share, quite often people say to me, what's the biggest difference between coaching in sport and coaching in business? And the answer is this model, which hopefully you can all see. So this is a model that is borrowed very unashamedly from the Navy SEALs. If you can't see it very well, I'll talk you through it at the same time. So this model, the Navy SEALs use this model based on performance and what they call trust. I call the bottom line person when I'm speaking to sports teams, and I'll go through the difference of the two in a second. Performance for the Navy SEALs will say, on the battlefield, do you have the skills that I can trust you with my life? And away from the battlefield, do you have the necessary people skills that I would trust you with my money and with my wife? So that's the way the Navy SEALs term it. And they use this when they're picking what they call SEAL Team 6, which is the elite of the elite. So SEAL Team 6 are the best. And when they come to pick it, they're looking to score people based on how technically good they are at what they do and what kind of human being they are. Now, pardon my expression for saying this, but this is the best way of exempling it. When I go to a sports team, I often say to them, who can be the biggest idiot in your team? And people tend to point to the same one or two people. Normally, they're high performers. They score a lot of tries, make a lot of tackles, score a lot of runs, take a lot of wickets. I predominantly work in the world of cricket and rugby as sports coaching, but they tend to be people who perform very well. And sometimes we forgive some of the people skills in terms of the cultures, the values, the ethics, because we're overcome with performance. And what the Navy SEALs realized is that this box, this number 7 box up here, is what they refer to as the toxic box. So once you've got people who perform very well, but they're not good people, they're not good human beings, they don't make it into SEAL Team 6. Sometimes they even exit the SEAL program first of all. And this is the best way of explaining the difference between sport and business, because forward-thinking businesses and sports obsess not on the y-axis, not on the performance, they obsess on the people axis, what we call the x-axis. Because they know the quickest way to get somebody to the high-performing, high people skills box is to make them better versions of themselves, and then they'll perform better. There's a natural pathway across and then up. Businesses tend to be obsessed with the y-axis in generalization. They're obsessed with performing better. Normally, when I go and talk to a business around doing some coaching for their people or for their leaders, the question I'm always asked is, what's going to be my return on investment here? Because they're already looking at the performance. And my answer to them is that probably is the wrong question to ask. That's the wrong way of looking at this. Because training like this, coaching like this, works on making people better versions of themselves, better human beings. The better way to examine that is, my answer to those financial directors who tend to be, is what I call this BIOS model. Okay, so BIOS is a model I use a lot in sport. How you behave, your behavior will always drive an input. Whether it's you're talking on the phone to a customer, whether you're playing a game and you're actually participating and making tackles and scoring runs and playing cricket, whatever it might be, whether you're down the pub with your friends, interacting with a group of friends when we can in the pub, every time we behave, we're generating an input into a social situation or to a situation. Every input generates an output. Everything we do, whether we talk very impolitely to a customer on the phone, it might result in a complaint. If we never talk to any of our friends for a year, we might stop getting invited to things. Whatever it might be, every input we have generates an output. And I come from the world of insurance now, the Change Consulting Group. We measure a lot of things in statistics. So most things can be measured by some statistics, some way, shape, or form. Now, the higher up business you go, board levels tend to look here. They tend to look at output and statistics. And you can almost draw a dotted line across the middle. Because boards, or a lot of people, are based on what are we outputting, how many, from my world, how many claims we're dealing with, how many phone calls do we get, how many complaints have we got. They're looking at ways of measuring our output and statistics. How much money are we making, output and statistics. Leaders, in my world, get paid a lot of money to turn statistics back into behaviors. If we're seeing a good set of outputs and statistics, analyze what behavior am I seeing that's good. If we're seeing what results down here that we don't want, what do we have to change that behavior to then move it through differently? And the core thing that sits at the top of this is how we think will drive how we feel, and how we feel will drive how we behave. This idea that these stories in our heads will dictate a set of feelings to us. And the tool I'm going to give to you in a second will help you to run through this, to use an example that's more, probably means more to you, okay? What makes this harder is the way our brains are configured. Our brains are intensely sophisticated computers. They work on programming and hardwiring. I've seen someone put in the chat about the computer programming, exactly how our brains work. So just to give you an idea as a heads up, some key parts of the brain we'll talk about today. Top of the spinal cord, you've got the reptilian brain. Reptilian brain keeps you alive. It measures things like heart rate, hydration, food levels, sleep patterns. It keeps us alive. Wrapped around the reptilian brain, we have what we call the limbic system, which is our emotional response to the world around us. Okay, so it handles what we call the fight or flight, as you might know it. At the front of our heads, we've got what we call the frontal cortex, the logic, the human being, the rationalization. And at the back of our brains, we have something called the parietal. And the parietal is a computer in which all of our beliefs are stored. So the way we see the world is stored in that parietal. Those neural pathways through the field are all sat in the parietal. And when something happens to us around us, the limbic system acts 10 times faster than the frontal cortex. So most of the time we're reacting in a very animalistic, catastrophic at times, fight or flight, emotional-based response. And both the limbic system and the frontal cortex can look into the parietal and say, what do we think about this situation right here? And whatever we program into that parietal, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, will come to the front, and then we'll start saying a certain thing, and we start behaving a certain way, because these thoughts generate feelings, feelings generate behaviors. Sometimes it's not the thoughts or feelings or behaviors necessarily we would choose. Sometimes it's not the thoughts, feelings, or behaviors we necessarily want. I challenge everybody every morning before you get out of bed, spend 20 seconds thinking about how you want to feel today. Most people never say to me, I want to feel angry, frustrated, unproductive, unfriendly. Most people say, I want to be productive, I want to be energetic, I want to be enthusiastic. But then as the day takes over and this emotional catastrophic response is happening to us, the world changes for us. And on reflection, at the end of the day, we say, oh, it might have been a bad day for us because things might have happened to us. But this idea that actually our brains are, you're exactly right. So Dr. Steve Peters wrote a book called Mind Management. The chimp paradox, as he called it. And he refers to the limbic system as the inner chimp. And the chimp is something Steve Peters worked with a lot of guys like British Cycling. He talks about in the book quite a lot. He coaches Ronnie O'Sullivan. He's worked with the England football team, Liverpool Football Club. He talks around this chimp just nipping away at us all the time, giving us really negative thoughts, hardwired to help us avoid pain. And it's already priming us to get used to dealing with the pain of something going wrong. And these thoughts are very unhelpful, and we've got to find a way of dealing with it. So the Mind Management book is a great way, gives us a great insight into how we can help tame that chimp and look after it. And the tool I'm going to show you in a second is another way of doing it. There's no one way that will work for everybody. It's just a different way of seeing the world to understand how we can change what we're doing. Where we choose to put our focus will help us interpret the world around us. So we have this choice of putting where our mind wants to be, okay? For anybody coming out of a relationship, you hear a song on the radio and all of a sudden these lyrics are really me, I really get this right now, and I can relate to this song. It's the same song you heard 3 months before, but your brain wasn't primed for a relationship. It wasn't primed for pain, so it didn't hear the lyrics in the same way. If you're ever going to buy a new car, all of a sudden when you're driving around, all you see is the car you're about to buy on the road. There are no more versions of the car on the road that you're going to buy than there ever were before, but now your brain is picking them out because its brain thinks as what it wants to see. You primed your subconscious brain to see what it wants to see. There's a thing called the reticular activating cortex in the mind, and it filters all the stimuli that comes into us. And around 0.001% of the stimulus goes into our conscious mind. So we can prime it and we can see the world in a slightly different way. Now, I'm not going to be able to see you do this, but there's something I'm going to show you, which we do in sport all the time as a mental rehearsal technique. So what I'd like you to do is stand up for me. Again, we haven't warmed up, don't go mad with this, but find somewhere you can move your arm around and not hit anything behind you. And if you can still hear me at the same time, that'll be amazing, because I'll talk you through what this is going to be, okay? So if you can find that space, stand, feet shoulder width apart, and I'd like you to point your finger out in front of you. Point your index finger straight in front of you, arm out straight, right hand. And now what I'd like you to do is swing your right arm round as far as you can and point at the spot behind you, but swing it around as far as you can. And now turn and look at the spot you're pointing at, either a spot on the wall, a window, a picture, whatever it is. Get a mental picture in your head of what your finger is pointing at when you swing your right arm round as far as you can go. Okay? Get that picture in your mind, bring your arm back round to the front and drop it down by your sides. Now, keep your hands by your sides for this bit and please close your eyes. You're in a safe space, nothing's going to happen to you. It's mental rehearsal technique. So with your arms by your side and your arms closed and your eyes closed, I want you to imagine this. Imagine your arm out in front of you again. Picture it in your mind and picture it swimming around with your finger pointed and looking at the point you saw before. Picture what it looks like in your mind, that mental snapshot you took of the picture you were looking at, that spot on the wall behind you. Now in your mind, bring your arm back round to the front and drop it down to the side again. Second time, keep your arms by your side, keep your eyes closed. We're going to do this again. This time, as you picture your arm swinging around, I want you to picture your arm swinging just beyond the point you were first looking at. Just a little bit beyond that point, that mental picture you took, a little bit further up the wall, a tiny bit further up. Get an idea of what that looks like in your mind. Then in your mind, bring your arm back around to the front and drop it down by the side. Third and final time, in your mind. Don't do this, but in your mind, with your eyes closed, picture your arm pointing out in front of you again. Now, this time, your arm, when it swings around in your mind, is going to go way further than the first point you looked at. it's going to go effortlessly past that first spot on the wall, and you're going to be now pointing further up the wall than you ever thought you could. Get a picture in your mind of what that would look like if you pointed that far further up the wall. Get this real clear mental picture in your head. Swing your arm back round and down by your side. Okay, now open your eyes for me. Point your finger again out in front of you, your right index finger, and now swing your arm around as far as you can. Just in the chat box for me, type yes if you went further the second time than you did the first time, or no if you didn't. Yeah, for most people that will work. Even people who've done it before, that will still work. And what we learn from this is a very straightforward principle. What we focus on, we get. If you go to a networking event thinking it's going to be fun, you'll see all the reasons why it's fun. If you go to a meeting thinking it's going to be boring, guess what you'll see? All the reasons why that meeting's boring. The same neural pathways light up whether we do something or whether we think about doing something. A guy called Alan Richardson in Australia took a basketball team and he split the team into thirds. Group one was the dummy group. He said, for 3 months, don't think about basketball, don't touch a basketball, don't do anything at all for 3 months. Group two, he said, go to the gym every day, 15 minutes, practice free throws for 15 minutes every day for 3 months. Group three, he said, don't touch a basketball for 3 months, but every day for 15 minutes, using a mental rehearsal technique, similar to the one I just showed you there, think about free throws and how you would make free throws using this technique. After 3 months, he brought them back into the gym. Group one had got worse. They were the dummy group. They hadn't thought about basketball, touched a basketball. They got worse at free throws as a percentage. Group two, the group that were practicing, had got 27% better at hitting free throws as a percentage. Group three, who hadn't touched a basketball for 3 months, had got 24% better. So what we're thinking about, how we're priming our brain, will dictate how we see the world, and the version of the world that we choose to see is exactly the world that we'll see. So what I'm going to do is give you an example of something now. So I want you to think about something that annoys you, okay? And again, you haven't got to share this. If you write it down in front of you, write it down in front of you. Think of something that bugs you, that irritates you, that worries you. You know, something that gets in your way of what your perceived level of happiness would be. It could be something minor. It could be something major. It could be something like lockdowns and COVID, as we're all living through now. It could be something as trivial as somebody putting the bins out in the house, or not putting the bins out in the house, or tidying their room, whatever it might be, okay? And I'm going to give you examples as we go through this from a guy I met a couple of years ago. So whilst we're thinking of an example, I'll introduce you to a guy called Rob Thomas. Rob Thomas works at a company in Bridgend. He lives in Cardiff, he works in Bridgend. And I was speaking at a leadership event at this company in Bridgend. And when I asked him this question, his example was he drove every day from Cardiff to Bridgend to go to work. And for anybody who knows the M4 motorway, the M4 motorway is a bit weird, because the inside lane becomes the slip road. So if you're on the inside lane, the next junction, you just leave the motorway whether you want to or not. So you have to come out of that lane. And he said that because he was local, he knew how the motorway works. He got really frustrated with people pulling out in front of him all the time. That was his thing. So that was the thing that annoyed him, the thing that worried him. Now, what's important for us right now, and I'll come back to Rob's example as we go through this, is that we learn to accept the thing that we're thinking about is just a thing. It's something that happening to us or around us in that moment of time, but we need to learn to accept it. This is not where optimism sits in. This is the first stage. It's important for 3 reasons. First of all, stress. We worry way more than we need to. Chronic stress is twice as bad for us than smoking, okay? And also it shuts down the creative thinking part of our brain, which gets in the way of us finding this level of happiness. Second reason, reality. We need to see it for what it is, not for what it might be. That root cause of anxiety comes from playing out scenarios that haven't happened yet and might not even happen at all. Third reason, performance. If we're focusing on something unhelpful or negative, it will limit the way we can move forwards and it will start affecting our performance, okay? So thinking of your challenge, whatever you've written down, whatever you thought about, I'm going to ask you a question. The question I'm going to ask you is, can you accept it and say it is what it is? Now, when I ask you that, I'm not saying to you, you're not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to say you're not going to change it. I'm not going to say you'll just leave it wherever, because that's not optimism. This is realism. But can you say it is what it is, the world around you right now? To help you answer that question, think of 3 different sub-questions. A, is it out of your control? So that thing you're causing you worry or anxiety or stress or frustration, is it out of your control, yes or no? B, can you do something about it, yes or no? C, does it bring you unhelpful thoughts or feelings, yes or no? If you've answered yes to any one of those 3 sub-questions, you will be well served to be able to say, do you know what? It is what it is. Right now, as I sit here right now, at 7:15 on the 26th of May, this is just a thing, okay? It's important for us that we can. If you can't, don't worry. We can go into a lot more depth if we have more time, so the reasons why you might not be able to say that. So if you can't answer yes to the first question, it is what it is, not a problem at all, but there'll be a reason for it somewhere, okay? The second half of what we do, this is what I call the realism side. The optimism side, where we start finding a deeper level of happiness, comes from what I call shift, okay? Now shift, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. The 4 questions I'll ask you is, can you have a think around what you would choose to think, feel, achieve, and do about your problem, okay? I lay it out like this because sometimes it helps us to think about the world in this way. And you can look at the left-hand side of the line and say, if I stay stuck in my problem, if I stay stuck in the thing that's causing me irritation, what would I be thinking, feeling, achieving, and doing? So for Rob's example in Bridgend, he's thinking, you guys are all idiots. You're all tourists, you're in the wrong lanes, you haven't got a clue how this motorway works. What am I feeling? I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling like I might be late, I'm feeling a little bit stressed out. What am I achieving? Not a lot. I'm just getting myself worked up. And actually what's happening is the first hour of my day in work, I'm very frustrated, I'm in a very bad mood, I'm very bad tempered. The first hour when I get home with my family, with my children, I'm in a bad mood, so I'm not enjoying that hour with them. So actually what I'm achieving is not being the version of me that I want to be. And what am I doing about it? I'm just shouting at people, I'm screaming at people, I'm shaking my fist, I'm doing all the things in the car that I wouldn't want to do. So if you then flip it over and say, what would I choose to think about this? I want to choose to think that it's okay, it's just a thing. You know, you're not local to the area, so you might not know how the motorway works. It's okay. I'm going to change the way I think about it. I want to feel relaxed. I want to feel safe. I want to feel happy that I can help if I can let you out of that lane in the middle lane. I want to achieve getting to work in a better mood, be the version of me that I want to be. So when I get into work, I'm in a happier state. When I get home, I can spend more time with my children, more quality time. What am I going to do? And the reason I'm telling you this story is because Rob, when I went to speak to him a year later, Rob came up to me at lunch and he told me what he did. And he created a game. And his game was essentially, every time he sat in the middle lane of the motorway and people started to pull out, he started to look for the people who were in the wrong lane. He started to try and work out who might be in the wrong lane. And when they indicated to pull out, he would flash his lights and he would let them out. And for every person who said thank you to him, he scored a point in his mind. And then to and from work, he tried to break his record every single day. So what had changed for Rob in the world around him? Absolutely nothing. Cars were still pulling out. People were still in the wrong lanes. What he had done was he had turned it into something fun for him. So rather than being in their blind spots and getting really close to them, getting really annoyed, he would hang back. He would flash his lights. He would be a better version of himself, the version that's kind, the version that's going to help people. And they said thank you, he scored a point. And every day he tried to beat his record. Now, the world around the issue that you've put down, first of all, won't have changed for you. But we have a choice as to what we're going to think about it, how we're going to feel about it. Sometimes there's nothing we can do. You know? So I did a session a few years ago, Brexit was one of the hottest topics. What we wanted to think was it will be okay. In 20 years' time, we'll look back on this and go, oh, it won't be funny getting so worked up about it. That's what I would choose to think. I choose to feel relaxed and safe. Nothing I can choose will do, it's out of my control. But actually, I just want to think more helpful thoughts. And I want to feel things that I choose to feel rather than being wound up by something that's out of my control. And in those moments, we find an easier way to grasp what we might refer to as being happiness, okay? So now what you'll start seeing is when you get primed for looking for these, you'll start recognizing either things in your head or things that people are saying around you. My all-time favorite at work is, time's going really slowly today. I love that phrase. Time is probably the most reliable constant we have in the world. So the feeling that time might be going slowly might be driven by a thought we're having, we're not enjoying what we're doing, or we might be bored at what we're doing. There's a task that's not lighting us up, so it feels like it's dragging, but time is a constant. And when you recognize these in yourself, in your family or friends or your colleagues at work, there might be a conversation you want to have. There might be a tool you want to help. And part of my coaching is to give people tools such as this and just say, if it's something that helps you, it helps you. But it's something you can systematically work through. It might be at the start, you need to work through it as a flow chart and lay it out the way I've laid it out. Once it becomes part of your muscle memory, you'll just start seeing the world in a slightly different way. The X-axis, personal growth we talk about, comes from developing the skill of reflecting and analyzing our thoughts. Okay. One thing I'll leave you with this morning, actually, you want to do some reading on it. There was a great story on the BBC website this morning, BBC Sport website, about Rafael Nadal and his coach, Uncle Tony. And there's a line in there which Tony says, I wasn't worried about how he performed. I was driven to make him a better version of himself, to develop his personal, his resilience, his level of emotional intelligence was what drove me forward. This X-axis development will then help us to perform better and be the version of us that we want to be and channel the energy in a different way. Thank you very much for listening. We've got a few minutes now. If you've got any questions, any thoughts, you want to talk about anything I've said, if you can turn your cameras back on, I can now will see you. Hopefully Zoom won't cut out again.
I was going to suggest that maybe come on the camera if you want to ask a question, but maybe don't all rush back to have cameras on.
Let's treat Zoom very carefully here because we're not quite sure what's going on.
And I was going to say, I'd like to, we don't normally do it, but let's overrun 5 minutes because we had a tech problem. So let's take 10 minutes of questions and discussion. Who has a comment, question for Rob? Any takers? Or an alternative point of view?
I guess obviously just a general bit of sort of feedback. Obviously, Rob, I've seen you do a couple of obviously speaking sessions like this, and it's always obviously, you know, mind-blowing. Obviously, how really self-conscious obviously that we become, and obviously, like you said, with regards to how being frustrated, I know that I do that living in London. You know, I get so much frustrated with just things like the tube. You know, looking at that side of things with the car, you know, it bugs the hell out of me to think, oh, this person's jumped in front of me, and now I've got to wait another 3 more minutes to do it. But it's mad, obviously, to just obviously take that step back and go, actually, let's turn it around. And obviously, that idea of obviously playing the game is actually right up my street from my personality, as you know, because it just obviously, just to do that re-engagement is really good. But yeah, that, you know, a great session obviously again with you, and so many good points to take away from it.
And the one thing I'll say, Tom, is people don't tend to do this. We tend to take things for granted. But if you're going to journey home from work and you're going to go on the tube, or before you get in your car, people never think about what they want to achieve from this journey. But if you did take 20 seconds and just say, what do I want to get from this? You tend to get a list of people saying things like, I want to relax, I want to unwind, I might want to listen to music. If I'm on the tube, I want to read a book. Don't advise that if you're driving. If you're driving, you've got hands-free, you might make a couple of calls to people. I want to be safe. You tend to get a list like that. You never get a list of people saying, I want to be really frustrated, driving really fast, too close to the car in front, shaking my fist and swearing. That's not anyone's list. But the reason why we start doing it is because this limbic system kicks in. So when somebody cuts us off or someone jumps in front of us in the queue, this emotional response pattern kicks in. And there's all of these unhelpful thoughts or feelings that start bringing to us a set of emotions and set of behaviors that we don't want to see. But quite often we never sit at the start and say, what do I want to achieve from my day? What do I want to achieve from my journey? What do I want to achieve from this meeting? We tend to just go through the motions with certain things and allow this feeling to wash over us. But the principle of mindfulness is around channeling and saying, in this period of time, what's good for me? And that's something that people don't tend to do. They either don't reflect enough or they don't plan enough for stuff they're going through. Not saying everyone should, but if you do, you end up with a completely different list of the things you just mentioned there.
Yeah, and looking back at it, and obviously just with the points you've mentioned, I know that I can tell that, like previously before being in London, that it would change my mentality first thing in the morning. Obviously, if that occasion, obviously, if that occasion actually happened and someone did do that and it rallied me up, I know that I would then walk into the office or wherever it was, and I necessarily wouldn't be saying hello to everybody and being sort of bubbly and everything else, and end up just going to, you know, where I am to sit, and that's it. And then obviously the next day, if it was absolutely fine, I'd be going past everyone going, hello, good morning, how was your night last night?
Yeah.
But so obviously, until you've sort of pointed that out and spoken about it today and thinking about it, you don't even realize that on a reflection. And as you said, on a reflection side of things, therefore you think to yourself, it doesn't even pass your subconsciousness. And
even if it does, you have that moment before you walk into the office. And I talk a lot about rugby players, especially about this, where you get those moments where you say, what version of me needs to go out there right now? So even outside the office, stopping for 10 seconds and saying, okay, I've had a bad journey on the tube. It's not how I've chosen, but I still have that choice of what version of me walks into that room. And if I choose that a really angry version that I walk in, make the choice. But just know that choice is still retained as yours. And for a lot of rugby players, you kind of go, you can walk out there, you can start swearing at people, punching people, doing whatever you want to do, but that's not the version of you probably want to be on the pitch right now. So you want to choose this version that's going to be the best version of you possible. Because at the end of the day, when you then look back on things and experience, all you're left with is how you remember it. And sometimes people, and I talk to people, especially cup finals, you know, big events for sports people, you kind of say, look, it's winning or losing is irrelevant. All you can do is be the best version of you. And if all of you are the best version of you, even if you lose, you'll look back with pride on that event. It's more likely that if you all go out there and be the best version, you're more likely to win anyway. But actually, when it comes to it, 6 years' time, you're talking to your grandkids about this big final you played in, you want to talk with pride about it, not be ashamed that you went out there and you didn't put in the effort you wanted to do. Because the end of the game will come. The end of your day will come. And are you known as that guy who can be really aggressive and angry when you walk to the office, or are you going to be that guy who's always really happy and cheerful? Choice is yours. Yeah. But recognize it in those moments that you have that moment just to recompose and walk in a different version.
Right, let's let some other guys in. Huck, did you want to?
Yeah, I wonder, Rob, have you heard of the expression fika? Swedish expression, a Swedish word. It's quite a special word. It means to sit down with friends and have a cup of coffee or tea and have a little cake or something. And what that sense that you are talking about is doing the same with yourself, to really give yourself a pause. And
self-care is really important.
Yeah,
I love that phrase. Yeah. I want to look that up. Fika.
Fika.
Cool.
Can you say it?
Fika. Is that, you've actually got it on the cup there. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Who else would like to ask a question?
One in black and one in white.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to ask a question or have a comment?
Yeah.
Phil.
So something I learned quite a lot of years ago that I found really, really helpful is something about being on it. So if I, somebody cuts me up in on the motorway, or somebody annoys me, or something happens, and I get angry, a question that I now ask myself after learning this is, so how long am I prepared to be on it about this?
Mm.
So it's like a stopwatch or a timer or what have you. I can say to myself, am I going to be on it for 10 minutes? Or am I going to be on it for the rest of the day? Or am I going to be on it for 2 minutes?
Mm.
How long am I prepared to be on it? And quite often, just by asking the question, I get off it. Just as, within a couple of seconds.
Brilliant. I love that. Because the answer is probably, I don't want to be on it at all.
Right. So you find that you just don't get on it.
Yeah.
After a while.
Okay. Anyone else got a comment or a question? Sorry, Louise.
I love that, Phil. I wish I'd heard that about 2 hours ago when I was talking to my daughter, because I could have just said to her, how long are you going to be on it, Eve? But so the thing that resonated with me, as you probably thought it might do, Rob, from our conversation in the breakout room, this the high performer, and seeing that so often in a business where they will absolutely tolerate the behavior of the high performer because they are bringing in the metrics. And it's that absolutely resonated. And I think the other bit that really resonated is that link between the think, feel, behave, as we've been saying, just how they are so intrinsically linked, and gearing yourself up in that mindset to influence the kind of rest of your day. So no, it's a really inspiring and thoughtful session. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good. I think we've got time for one more person. I really want to say something about the chimp paradox very quickly, but one more person with a bit of feedback, comments, question for Rob. And we're going to run till 5 past. Okay, I just want to say, I've been revisiting the chimp paradox. I think it's amazing, all that stuff, understanding that. And there's actually some pretty cool, very short YouTube videos just about what it is. But this whole process of understanding when it's the chimp, and that basically what I've noticed in my life is that can be very problematic when it is the chimp that's taking charge, and not the human, right? It's the human's the other part of it, and the computer's the thing that's running on autopilot.
Yeah.
This emotional response to things that can be really challenging, and just trying to figure out the way to get that under control is. And when
you look at things like that, I was coaching someone a few months ago, and they were going for a job interview, and they said, I'm no good at interviews, was what they said to me. I want some coaching, I'm no good at interviews. When I actually challenged them and said, how many interviews have you been in? How many have you passed? They could remember 8 interviews, of which they passed 6. I said, you're really good at interviews. So that statement of I'm no good at them is a chimp one that's preparing you to fail the interview, preparing you to be okay, but actually you're pretty good at them. So it comes from somewhere else. So it's really unhelpful to get these thoughts or feelings that are ticking around. And that book's an amazing one to read because it gives a really good insight into how it works at a fundamental level.
it's a very good metaphor, isn't it? And you go on a whole rabbit hole about what it is that's triggering that emotional response and what's the projection going on there. All that stuff is fascinating. I'm just going to do a quick wrap up in the next couple of minutes. But Esme, would you like to speak for 1 minute about your talk in 2 weeks? And I just want to say, okay, Esme, do that first, and then I'll do the thanks to Rob. And Esme, do you want to take a minute?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say thanks to Rob. That really resonated with me as well, because so much at work I'm just like, oh, someone's printing something off again, and obviously I'm on the environmental team, so it's just trying to find that balance of just letting it be and then having a conversation afterwards, or like handing out a poster on email being like, did you know that there's so much water that gets produced with paper? And I don't know, sort of like a fact or something. Yeah, just trying to find the balance. I think meditation and trying to do a deep breath. So it sort of goes on to the talk that I want to do in 2 weeks' time, which is about definitely this monkey brain and the chimp, that's it, where it just, you know, goes off in your head and you think, oh God, what am I doing? And so I've been writing a children's book, and the writing part of it has been very therapeutic, like writing is. And then suddenly, now that the writing's over and the illustrator's nearly finished, it's like, oh shit, I've got to promote it now. So it's this promoting yourself and then uncovering so many boundaries within that and conditions that I've thought over the years, you know, and I've just got to, it gets to a point where it's not just about me, you know, it's bigger than that, you know, it's trying to publish it to the world because it's about a tree, you know, and it's about the legacy that trees leave. So it's just trying to actually cut the cord about the me and see it as a bigger picture, you know, going to like the higher power and all that jazz. But yeah, so really intriguing as well. Just I really like the science of yours, Rob, like, and very like structural as well, and how you describe the brain at the same time. So yeah, it's given me a lot of inspiration for my talk to get a bit more maybe into like the nitty-gritty of that side of it all.
Great.
And a positive message at the end.
Totally.
Yeah, thank you. Now.
Thanks, Esme. So I just want to wrap up really by saying I'm just going to post back in the chat about how to follow the peer space, and to say a big thanks to Rob Chilcott for coming along and doing that talk. We didn't do a kind of virtual applause. And so the peer space, you can follow us on LinkedIn. That's where everything gets posted. We have a website, thepeerspace.com. You can actually join kind of the community there for a very small fee. We're actually sort of launching a sponsorship thing where we're looking for companies to support or sponsor us, and then they could get involved in sort of sending more people, building the community, and involved in perhaps bringing along speakers, so that they might sponsor a speaker and that kind of thing and have a little message from them. We have been going for 3 years, mostly initially as a dinner group, and now pretty much every week since the lockdown. And the alternating format, I'll repeat, is the speaker night. So Esme in 2 weeks, there'll be something coming out in the next few days about her talk, and that alternates with what I call speed connecting sessions, which is a bit like the same beginning, but then we go into rounds of one-to-ones. So we do matchmaking one-to-ones. So the next one of those is next Wednesday at the same time at 6 o'clock. So do come again and bring a friend and follow us. And if you want to speak, definitely approach me. That's probably the most important thing. I'm trying to build up a list for that. And yeah, 30 seconds to 5 past. Anyone else got anything last thing to say? Rob, how do people reach you? Is there a way people can stay in touch? Or
LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. So if you sort of grab me on LinkedIn, we can message there and say, I do a lot of this work just to help people. And I say that sounds really, but I don't tend to, if you want to reach out and have a conversation about any of these points or any more depth, by all means do. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you at some point. So LinkedIn is probably the most user-friendly way of doing that.
Great. And if you want to save the chat, if you save the chat now, I won't be sending it around, but I will share this recording on the LinkedIn page. So 5 past the hour. So thank you very much, everyone. Hope to see you again.
Thank you, Niall.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you
Cheers,
so
guys.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
That's it.
Good to see you all.